To the Ministry Pipeline training video series. Today's video is all about the nominating committee. If you've been selected to serve on our church's nominating committee, congratulations and thank you for your willingness to serve in this role. Potentially, the nominating committee can serve as one of the single most important catalysts for church growth by working with program and committee leaders to discover and enlist new workers and leaders in our ministry. This committee shares the responsibility of providing the leadership to staff all church elected positions that are filled by volunteers, including those vacancies that occur throughout the year, unless otherwise noted in our church's bylaws. Now, before we get started with the orientation and training, I want to invite you, take your Bible, please join with me in Matthew chapter 9. And let's look at verses 37 and verse number 38 of Matthew chapter 9, verses 37 and 38. You may already be familiar with this passage of scripture, but I want to establish the biblical basis for the ministry that you are taking on as a member of the nominating committee. And in Matthew chapter 9, verse 37 and 38, Jesus is speaking to his disciples about the call to ministry. And in Matthew chapter 9, verse 37, Jesus then said to his disciples that the harvest is abundant, but the workers are few. Therefore, pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. Your responsibility is first established by a biblical basis here in this text, that we are committing ourselves to pray to the Lord of the harvest. We are following the leadership of the Lord as he directs us to his laborers here at New Home Baptist Church. Our task is a very special commitment and a very important task because we're helping people take their next steps in following and serving the Lord in our local church. You were selected in this position because I believe that you have some qualities that are very important for this role. First, I believe you're committed to prayer. This is an irreplaceable step in the nominating committee process. You are praying that God would give you leadership and direction to the right individuals to fill those roles of ministry in our church. Second, I believe that beyond New Home Baptist Church, God has an incredible kingdom ministry. And I believe that you see beyond just New Home Baptist Church, that God is much bigger. The field is much bigger. You see ministry in a way that is kingdom minded. I believe that you understand we are looking for people who do have loyalty to our church and to those affiliations that we share. But more importantly, we're looking for individuals like you who are committed and loyal to Jesus Christ above all. Third, you are inviting people to join God where he is working in our church and in our community. You've been selected for this role because you're already doing that. And I believe that you'll make a great asset to this team in your ministry. Each of our committees have an important task, and we're looking for people who understand that they're not just serving a role, but they're serving a very important ministry here at New Home Baptist Church. So, in essence, you and I are not just asking them to join us. We're asking them to join God in what he is already doing at work in our church. You might do it this way. And given this scenario, hi, Joe. Listen, I'm so excited to see how God is moving in our children's ministry. You know, over the last year, we've seen God increase the involvement of our children activities, children's participation. We really need someone with a heart for children like you have. You've got a lot of energy and could really make an eternal difference in the lives of those children and their families. Would you please consider praying about joining the children's team? I'd like to follow up with you about it next week. But in the meantime, would you pray about it? In fact, right now, would you mind if I have a word of prayer with you? Consider that tactic when you're addressing and inviting someone into a ministry role. Fourth, I believe that you have been selected for this role because we are serving in God's ministry. We're not just looking for available workers. We are serving in God's ministry and God's harvest, and we are looking for people who are spiritually minded, We're seeking people who model maturity already, that they're maturing in their faith, that they're teachable, that they are committed to the vision and mission of our church. One of the great rules of ministry is that we've got to be flexible. We need to be cooperative. We need to be supportive. And we're looking for individuals that already have those characteristics. Now, the purpose of this orientation video is to provide some guidance in your new role. So, whether you've served on this committee for many years or maybe this is your first time, I hope that this information in the video will be helpful to you during this orientation. We're going to cover the duties of this committee, some suggested projects, and the procedures of your responsibilities this year. So before we get started, I want first, please, to locate the packet that you've already been provided. You should have been given a packet that you're going to need in preparation for our first meeting. So go ahead and pause this video right here. And the first thing I want you to do is add the first meeting date provided for you in your packet. Add that to your calendar. Now, you're going to find that meeting date up here in the top corner, just below where it says Nominating Committee Meeting Agenda, because this is going to be a timeless video used throughout the years to come. I'm not going to give you specific dates in this video, but it will be in May. I'll give you that at least. And so look for the meeting date for the month of May. Go ahead and add that to your calendar. Next, go ahead and locate the page numbers on the bottom right-hand corner of your packet. So page 1, and we can follow that all the way through to page number 35. That will help us navigate through the packet together. On page 1, as we go through this packet, you're going to locate the Nominating Committee Meeting Agenda. And in just a few moments, we're going to review this agenda. Some of these items we're going to cover today briefly, and then we will also act on several of these items during our first meeting in the month of May. The second page includes minutes from the previous nominating committee meeting. Please review those minutes for any corrections, edits, or questions that you might have during the first meeting. The third page includes a timeline for the nominating committee process. It begins in May, and we try to have everything completed in August. So you'll notice that as you look through the timeline. Pages 4 through 8 should include instructions or descriptions directly from the church-approved bylaws. These are committee descriptions for those various ministry teams, committees, and church programs. And those are the commitments that each program is expected to fulfill. And pages 9 through 15 include the nominating committee report for the year that we're currently in. These include all the names of those volunteers and individuals who are currently serving in these various ministry roles. Pages 16 through 22 include the draft nominating committee report for this upcoming year. Now, as you go through this report, you will identify the red names that have been highlighted for you. This red highlight represents those individuals who have completed their ministry service for that specific area of ministry, or they have requested for the nominating committee to identify a new ministry volunteer for that ministry. Those individuals are currently in that role, but they will be stepping away, and that will be a vacancy that you and I will need to fill together. The final page is the ministry, well, actually, the next pages, I believe page 25 through 35, should include a directory. This is a pictorial directory, and it includes the contact information of the current membership of New Home Baptist Church. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. But the final page is a ministry interest survey. This is a survey that I created to reflect each of the current ministries that New Home Baptist Church offers. Now, going back to that memory directory for just a moment, it's a pictorial directory. It has the contact information to help you identify faces, names, and contact information for the current membership. And now I want to just highlight this. It'll come up later in the video, but make sure that as you're approaching folks and praying for them, all who serve on committees must be active members in good standing here at New Home Baptist Church. So now that we've covered the packet items, let's review the duties of our committee. First, you'll find the outline of these responsibilities on the meeting agenda on page 1. I want you to become familiar with this. And then also the description that is entailed for the nominating committee. First, it's important that you become familiar with the work of your assigned committees. Depending on how you count the number of committees and ministry teams and programs here at New Home Baptist Church, we roughly have around 26 ministry teams. However, there are a couple that still need to be added in the bylaws, such as Grief Share and Hearts of Hands Ministry. Each individual on the nominating committee, so all members will be assigned multiple committee teams and programs. For example, you could be given the responsibility to help secure volunteers for those committees that are listed on page 2. You could be responsible for helping identify and recruit volunteers for the property and maintenance committee, the ushers and greeters, flowers committee, and the decorating teams. So you could have that group of committees that you're going to be responsible for praying, understanding the work of those committees, and coming right beside those committee chairpersons that are currently serving to help them identify needs within their committee regarding those vacancies and who we might find to volunteer to serve in those roles. So I want you to look over these descriptions in your packet, and this is going to help you understand the kind of volunteer that you're looking for. Are they introverted, extroverted? Does this require a lot of commitment with their time throughout the year? How often does this committee meet? How many people are needed for this specific committee? I want you to talk with the chairperson. Find out what projects they've accomplished this last year. What goals did they meet? What goals and projects are being projected in the upcoming year? Find out about those details so you can have some working knowledge when it comes to recruiting your volunteers. Again, become familiar with the requirements of each committee because some of those committees require a certain number of people, a minimum number or even a maximum number. One of the things that I want to recommend is make every effort to have an odd number of people on the committees because there may come a time that they need to vote on a specific matter as a committee, and they need to have that final vote that breaks any possible ties. Second, as a team, we work with committee chairs to identify potential ministries, workers, and volunteers. So it's important that you understand our role is to come right beside the committee chairperson. The committee chairperson knows or should know their ministry area better than anyone else. And so it's important that rather than getting ahead of those committee chairpersons, our responsibility is to come right beside them. Ask them, do you have any suggestions of potential volunteers? Do you have anyone that you want me to talk about or talk to about your ministry and joining you? And so you come beside them, help them recruit workers for their ministry. Third, probably most important in this, it's necessary that each prospective volunteer is presented to the nominating committee before approaching them. Please make sure that you follow this. This is a very important procedure. We want to make sure that when we are recruiting folks, that we don't just immediately go to them, but rather we pray for them. We lift them up before the Lord and ask God to begin working in their heart about this specific ministry area. And then, either by text message or in a meeting in person, we present their names to the nominating committee. And then the nominating committee needs to review that individual to determine whether they're eligible to serve in that ministry capacity, or are they ready, or do we need to wait a little bit before putting him into that role. So please don't go recruit anybody without first coming to the nominating committee. And with that said, please remember that the pastor holds the privilege of veto power. So if a name is presented, there should be enough respect for the office of pastor that if the pastor says that person doesn't need to serve in that role, there don't need to be a whole lot of questions asked. There are times that myself and our chairman of our deacons becomes aware of certain matters that may not allow this person to be eligible to serve in that capacity. It may just be that they're not ready yet. It doesn't have to be a bad reason, but please respectfully honor that. Fourth, the nominating committee will conduct a ministry interest survey using the provided sheet that you'll find on your last page. That is this page here, really bright, colorful page. These are all the ministries that are currently a part of the work of New Home Baptist Church. Now, we are going to be responsible for conducting a survey during the month of June, and we're going to first do that through the Sunday school classes, ages youth and up. We want to identify the interest of our Sunday school classes, those individuals that are in those Sunday school classes. And then once we've completed that ministry effort of that survey, then we will expand it and broaden it to our Sunday crowd that comes on Sunday mornings as well. We could have a competition between the Sunday school classes to see who can get the most number of surveys back. And you'll use this surveys to see where individuals are interested in serving. It'll be a good gauge. We can format it into a spreadsheet. Our church track database and software will actually keep up with this information. And so we'll input all of that and tag those individuals, associating them with interest for those ministries. So what'll happen is once we do that, we can print a report for everyone that's interested in Grief Share, and it'll automatically populate a report for us for those prospective workers for Grief Share. If we want to know who's interested in church technology, well, we can run a report on that, and it'll auto-populate that kind of report for us. Again, let me just reaffirm that those members, according to our bylaws, who become members of church committees, ministry teams, shall be members of this church in good standing, and they should support and affirm the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. All volunteers must be presented to the church for approval during a regular business meeting prior to being placed in a position. So again, prayerfully pray for the person. Submit their name to the nominating committee. The nominating committee will review that. Typically, we approve those names, and then the nominating committee has to present a report and a recommendation to the church for the church body to approve those individuals that we are recommending. We do not have the authority to put anyone in a volunteer position. That has to be done by the church. We believe in a democratic process. We are a congregational body of believers. And so, therefore, we are required to submit all volunteers to be presented to the church for approval. Certainly, there are some exceptions to this. Vacation Bible School would probably be the most prominent exception, and but when it comes to our standing teams, standing committees, special teams, those are all required to go before the church. So don't go to someone and say, "Hey, I want you to serve in this role," and then start grooming them for that role. You need to bring that to the nominating committee, and then it needs to go to the church thereafter for approval. The church will receive a nominating committee report from us in the July business meeting. That will be a draft report, and ideally, we could present the final report at that time as well. But we certainly have to present the final report in the August meeting for review and adoption, because the new year starts September 1 and goes through August 31. Now, at various times, vacancies are going to show up throughout the year, and it will be our task as a nominating committee to review those vacancies, determine the need. Then we seek prospective volunteers and present those individuals once again to the church for approval. That can be done at any regular business meeting, but it still has to be done. The nominating committee is responsible for nominating special committees and their job descriptions unless they are otherwise provided for in the bylaws. Careful review of these committee responsibilities that we've just covered should give you an understanding of why I say that this committee, you and I, have the potential of being one of the greatest and single most important catalysts for the growth of our church and the impact that we're making eternally. Now that we've covered these responsibilities and duties, we've talked about the biblical basis of the nominating committee, what you're doing. We've talked about the responsibilities of the nominating committee. Let's talk briefly as we review the timeline for this committee nomination process. And you'll find that nominating committee process timeline on page 3 of your packet. During the May business meeting, the pastor is responsible for nominating a number of individuals. There is no specified number of individuals in the bylaws. I typically nominate 5 individuals as members of the nominating committee. And then the church has the opportunity from the floor to nominate any additional nominations. Once those nominations have ceased, the church will move to adopt those recommended names, and those individuals who are approved become regular members of the new nominating committee, and they begin their work immediately. Their term will expire August 31st of the following year, and typically I prefer to include at least one at-large member and the chairman of the deacon body. And so typically what I try to do, if it's going to be coming up, and it comes up every year during the month of May, the Brotherhood and the WMU, Women's Missionary Union, both of those auxiliary ministries elect their own directors. They do that very early in the month of May. So if they've already done that, I've received their names. So what I'll do is go ahead and take those individuals, our Brotherhood, WMU, and then our Sunday school director, and then our deacon chairman, and then one at-large member. That's my 5. So I go ahead and make those nominations during the May business meeting. The church approves those names, and then we get to work from there. And that saves us, because what happens in the bylaws is actually the Brotherhood director and the WMU director and the Sunday school director are not even elected until July. So that doesn't give us much time. So I've expedited the process by submitting those names already. Once we've done that, the church approves that, and we begin working that week on nominating committee process. So that's what this video is for. You're probably watching this video during the month of May, following the May business meeting, preparing for this season of nominations. Once the nominating committee meets for the first time, we're going to talk now about the first meeting of the nominating committee. We are encouraged to use Vacation Bible School as a way to identify new volunteers during VBS. Now, some of these volunteers may be serving in a supporting role that doesn't necessarily require them to be a church member. So it would be a good opportunity to identify who are those individuals and write their names down as prospects and encourage them along the journey to think about and prayerfully consider joining New Home Baptist Church. And those may be some of your best workers in the next couple of years. In July, the nominating committee will review the names of the prospects who we have selected to fill those assigned vacancies. At this time, we'll bring our recommendations to the committee for their review and approval. And so between May and July, you've been at work identifying individuals that you think would work well in your vacancies that you've been assigned. And then what you'll do is you'll draft out that list of names, bring it to the July committee meeting with your stuff, and you'll submit those names. We'll review them, and hopefully, ideally, the nominating committee can develop a draft report with all the vacancies fulfilled and present that report from that July meeting to the July business meeting for the church to approve. Now, our illustrious church administrative assistant will assist with the report of the nominating report, printing it, preparing it for the church business meeting. The final draft of the report should be presented to the church for review and approval in the August business meeting. So all nominating committee work needs to be done before the August business meeting for review by the church. One additional note that's important: Please inform the chairpersons of those committees that you're assigned, ministry teams that you're assigned, that they need to have their calendars and pre-activity reports completed and turned into the church office so that we can begin drafting the upcoming calendar for the church calendar year. So we've already sent out instructions on that. They should already be working on it, but you and I, as a nominating committee, will help oversee and make sure that we're encouraging them along the way to continue to do that. Please inform your committees that they should also meet the first Sunday of September. And there are some things they need to accomplish in that meeting. First, they need to elect a chairperson for that year. Secondly, they need to elect a vice chair. They need to elect, thirdly, a secretary. And one of the things that I'm going to expect this year is that when our committees meet, I want a record of those meeting minutes in the church office file. That's one of the file requirements that we have. We need to make sure that we're keeping up with those. And so if you'll help me, nominating committee members, inform your committees that they need to meet the first Sunday of September. They need to elect a chairperson. They need to elect a vice chairperson. They need to elect a secretary, and they need to make sure that that secretary is documenting those minutes and turning those into the church office very soon after their meeting. So when you're looking for new workers, there's a couple things that I want to encourage you to look for. First, I want to encourage you to encourage those volunteers not to overload themselves. It's an important stewardship not to chair more than one committee. Sometimes I realize that things get tough. We have, less people than we have work. And so what happens at times is you may have one person that chairs this committee A, and then they're chairing committee B, and then they're a part of committee C, and then they're serving as a secretary for committee D. That's not healthy leadership. We want to make sure that if someone is chairing a committee, chair that committee and don't serve on more than two committees. Now, that's a rule, that's a principle that we try to follow. And if we do, it will be to our benefit. Now, if we don't, it will be easy to get spread thin. We'll be responsible for so many tasks that we begin to neglect other responsibilities, not just ministerially, but personally with our family and our personal self-care. So we need to make sure that we are mindful of that. Second, we encourage individuals to limit their ministry terms. Now, some committees in our bylaws do impose term limits, such as the deacon ministry. Those are term limits limited to 3-year terms, and they can sit off for 1 year and then be election eligible. So we are mindful of that, limit ourselves as much as we can. And then let's just take a few minutes now to review the actual committees, ministry teams, and programs. Again, as I shared with you earlier, depending on how you count, we have roughly around 26 ministry teams and committees. So first, the nominating committee. I want to encourage you to review your job descriptions for all of these just to get an overview. I'm going to give you a summary of them. First, the nominating committee is consistent of those individuals nominated and approved by the pastor and church during the May business meeting. After that, regular members should also include the clerk and the assistant clerk, the church treasurer, the church finance committee chairperson, the Sunday school director, the WMU and brotherhood directors. The trustees, they are responsible for serving as legal officers for the church organization. They are responsible for representing the church as a legal organization, as those responsibilities are required by the state of Florida. Anytime that the church property or facilities are requested to be used, this is the team that's responsible for reviewing those requests and approving them. The seniority member, the 3rd-year member of the committee, will serve as chairman. So this is one of those committees, again, where there are imposed 3-year term limits. The 3-year individual will serve as the chairperson. And then the church clerk, that person is elected annually as a church officer, and they were responsible for the clerical responsibilities of the church. The church clerk is responsible for maintaining records of church business meetings and the church membership roll and those record requests. Some of these responsibilities have been delegated to the administrative assistant. Again, this is just a summary. This does not include an exhaustive list of all of the responsibilities for these teams, officers, programs, or committees. The church treasurer, that person is to be elected annually and is responsible for acting on the financial actions that are determined by the church body. The church treasurer does not make decisions on his own. The church treasurer is responsible for carrying out the decisions that are made by the church body. The finance committee, that person who chairs the committee is recommended by the nominating committee. This is done, I believe, again in the June business meeting. And this committee meets once a month prior to the church business meeting. They review the church finances. They recommend procedures that are appropriate for the church. The Sunday school director should be elected annually in July after being recommended by the nominating committee. He works to identify and nominate teachers and officers of the Sunday school. Each of those individuals, again, must be approved by the nominating committee first and then submitted for approval by the church prior to their service. No individual may be selected or placed into a position without the approval of the church first. No Sunday school classes may be started without the approval of the church. All vacancies that occur during the year are subject to the approval of the church. Our Baptist Brotherhood Director is responsible for organizing the Brotherhood ministry of our church, and the Baptist Women's Missionary Union Director is also responsible for organizing the women's ministry of the church. All of these programs that we've just described, all of these are church officers that we've talked about up to this point, are an extension of the vision of the church and the direction of the church, the mission of the church. None of these auxiliary ministries operate and stand alone. We meet with them, we work with them cooperatively. The pastor, the staff meets with these individuals, and we develop the mission, the plan, and the vision for the upcoming year. And then all of these committees are simply responsible for carrying out the ministry and the vision of the church. The Property and Maintenance Committee assists the church in matters that are related to property, administration, repairs, and improvements. The usher ministry is an important ministry. They are the face of our church. They are the first impressions ministry. That chairperson is responsible for selecting ushers and greeters who serve during the services of the church, including regularly scheduled services and special services such as funerals. The flower committee has two committees. One is the sanctuary and funeral flowers. The second is sanctuary decorations. Both of these teams fall under that same committee, and they should coordinate their efforts together and make sure that seasonal decorations and the flowers align appropriately. The music committee is led by the minister of music who chairs that committee. They organize the work of the committee throughout the year. The personnel committee is responsible for assisting the church on matters related to employed persons of administration, including compensation, policies, job descriptions, and reviews for non-ministerial staff. The pulpit committee is a special committee formed as needed. And then the baptism committee is responsible for preparing those baptism services. The nursery committee is a committee that is in charge of the church nurseries, providing nursery workers for the services and making sure that the nursery is kept clean and useful. Our nursery director chairs this committee. The benevolence committee is made up of the pastor and the deacons. They shall oversee recommending and giving assistance to people in need within the limits of the budget and the benevolence policies. The youth steering committee. This committee is responsible for planning and providing activities to minister to the youth of our church, as well as promote the growth from youth within our community. Each year, The church nominating committee will submit names to the membership of the church for their approval. The hostess committee, the hostess is responsible for coordinating the social activities of the various departments of the church as needed. They are responsible for the food, the kitchen, the equipment. This committee also has two subcommittees. The midweek meals, those meals are done throughout the school year, and they are led by an individual who coordinates all of those meal prep and volunteers. And then the second is the subcommittee for decorations. Anytime that there is a social event or activity, this decoration team is responsible for decorating the appropriate venue for those decorations. Special committees may be formed from time to time as necessary, but it shall be terminated by two-thirds majority vote once the work has been completed. Church Technologies Committee. This committee is responsible for all things church technology related. And this committee is another committee that has numerical stipulations. This committee shall have no fewer than 4 persons and no more than 6. Safety and Security Team. This team is responsible for the details of church safety. They should be comprised, again, a self-imposed, rather by law imposed number here, 4 members, and that includes the safety director, the deacon chairperson, and then 2 members who also are required to be members from other committees. And so we want to make sure we are aware of those stipulations. So I want to encourage you, make sure you look over the church programs, become familiar with them. We've simply just provided you a summary of all of those committees and ministry teams. I'm not going to revisit those, but I do want you to become familiar with them. Now, out of all of those ministries, again, how you count them, there may be 26. You're going to be assigned as one member, probably, let me just do this real quick. Calculator. Let's say we have 28, because we do have those other unofficial committees. And right now we have 5 committee members on the nominating committee. So you're going to be given about 6 committees. You're going to be responsible for becoming familiar with the work, the scope of the work, the numerical stipulations, term limits, the goals, the progress. You're going to be familiar with working with the chairperson of that committee. You're going to be given 6 of them, 5 to 6. And you'll be responsible for helping us fill vacancies for those. So we're not asking you to take on 26 committees. We're asking you to take on between 5 to 6 committees. I do want to encourage you, remind all chairpersons that whoever is chairing their committee is also responsible for participating in the church council. Now, last year, I made the recommendation that we would begin adjusting the schedule for church council. So we meet 6 times a year, and we ask the committees to meet 6 times a year. So on month A, the church council meets. On month B, the church committees, teams, programs meet. And then we just rotate that through. And so on the months that church council is not meeting, those are the months that I anticipate and expect our committees to meet. Again, I just want to encourage you to become familiar with the full scope and detail of each of these committees, as I've provided now for you a summary outlining each of those committees, ministry teams, and church programs. So let's transition now real quick. Let's finish up the video by talking about our first meeting as a nominating committee meeting. We hinted to it earlier in the video. What we've done up to this point, we've talked about the biblical basis of the nominating committee team. We've looked at the duties of the members of the nominating committee. We've looked at the descriptions of the nominating committee committees, teams, programs. Now let's finish this video by talking briefly about our first meeting coming up here in just a little while. During the first meeting, We will select a secretary for this committee. Their responsibility is to provide and maintain typewritten notes of each of our meetings and provide those as minutes promptly following the meeting via email. So, whoever's responsible for that will handwrite their notes. You can type them afterwards and then submit them by email to all the nominating committee members. You're not going to have to do this very often. Again, the most of our work will be done between the month of May and August. And then throughout the year, we'll deal with vacancies as they come up. The second thing we will discuss is conducting the ministry interest survey. We're going to assign a leader who will help us organize and detail that specific project. And then we will organize the steps for that as necessary. Third, we need to assign each committee member with those 5 to 6 areas of ministry that you'll be responsible for. And so these are the 3 things that I intend for us to do during our first meeting. This is not an exhaustive list. There may be a few things that come up between now and our first meeting, so keep that in mind. But let's begin praying. Again, Matthew chapter 9, verses 37, 38. Pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would send forth laborers into his harvest, knowing that the field is white and ready, but the laborers are few. Listen, I look forward to meeting with you very soon. Please bring your packet and a notepad so you can keep notes. And as always, if you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm here to help. Listen, I want to see this be the best nominating committee that I've ever led. And I believe we are at a very good place to do that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for watching this ministry pipeline training video. Today, we've been talking about the nominating committee. Have a great day.